All right. Okay, hello guys. I think we are here now and we're live. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Youth Prevention Advocacy Campaign live show. It is the first in a number of them that we're planning to host as a Zambian Youth Platform. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us once again. A special welcome to our three guests that are joining us today for the very, very first live show on this particular project supported by UNAIDS. So I have Dr. Tharcisse Barihuta, who is UNAIDS Zambia Country Director. I'm also joined by Dr. Connie Osborne, the Director General for National AIDS Council in Zambia. And of course, Mr. Levi Singh, who is the SRH Youth Strategy Officer for the Regional Office Southern SRH Africa Trust. All right, thank you so much, you all, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to this show. And we don't have so much time. We will get going, and I just give my three guests just a bit of time for them to just say a bit about themselves. But before I do that, let me just speak to the Youth Prevention Advocacy Campaign that we are running. We've been running since May this year with support from UNAIDS. The need for this particular project has actually been informed by the rising numbers in adolescents and young people that are continuing to get infected by HIV. And of course, also the deaths that are being caused or related to HIV among adolescents and young people. We feel that's unnecessary. It shouldn't be happening. There is treatment available. We're seeing improvement at different age groups, and yet young people are still affected in a major way. And we know, again, that there is quite a lot of investment in the area of HIV, and especially treatment that is the most expensive. For the young people, this particular project especially is really focused on ensuring that we begin to focus a bit more also on reducing the new HIV infections in an effort to close the tap of new infections, so we don't continue investing a lot more in treatment, but also trying to strike a balance between treatment and prevention. But this project overall is really driven by the adolescents and young people themselves. They've been developing messages. They've developed a lot of sexy and catchy messages that are communicating to the fellow adolescents and young people. And of course, they're also doing a lot of work. They've committed to doing different things, realizing that HIV prevention can only be won at an individual level. So the project has a lot going on. But for now, I'll pause here and just now give an opportunity to my guests. I think I'll start with Dr. Tharcisse Barihuta, who I would like to actually speak to the young people with regard to a number of issues at a global level. Of course, I spoke to the issue of the high infection rates and the like. So, Dr. Barihuta, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Tharcisse Barihuta. I'm currently UNAIDS Country Director in Zambia, and UNAIDS is a United Nations Joint Program bringing together 11 UN agencies to support the countries on HIV/AIDS. When it comes to key priorities, as you know, 2021 has been a very wonderful year, as our board has approved the new AIDS global strategy, and also the member states, the heads of state, have approved the 2021 HIV political declaration aimed to end inequalities and pave the foundation for ending AIDS by 2030. In terms of priorities, we have agreed to work around three key priorities. First is to make sure we have access and equitable access to HIV services and solutions, meaning that HIV prevention services, treatment and care have to be available for all of us. Secondly is, of course, to look at the key barriers to bring down those barriers, whether it comes in terms of laws, when it comes of cultural or religious barriers, to make sure that we make an environment which will help all the people, particularly young people and key population, to access services. The third one, of course, to do that, we need resources, full resource HIV response. And of course, for the sustainability, we have to integrate those services in health system of at public level, private, community level, but also to make sure that we focus also in some humanitarian settings when it comes to pandemics. And the COVID has demonstrated that we still have vulnerabilities. Coming back to the key drivers in terms of young people, and I think we can structure them around one, the lack of knowledge and competencies for the young people. And secondly, the key other drivers is, of course, the lack of access to those services I was referring to. And because of those issues I was talking about, the environment, laws, who are blocking the young people to access to those services. Thirdly is, of course, the empowerment, the issue of poverty because of job are lagging behind. The young people are not access to easily to employment. And this is issue of poverty can lead, of course, unprotected sex, unwanted pregnancies, and the cycle became vicious. And of course, the other key drivers is those structural social norms, particularly gender-based violence. We have talked about the religious and cultural norms. Those are key drivers, of course, preventing young people to have access to HIV and sexual reproductive health services. Now, when you look at those key issues, how to address them is important, one, to give knowledge and the competencies to young people. It's why the comprehensive sexual education is key, not only in the school, but also out of school. And we make sure that the HIV prevention, combination prevention, whether it is access to condoms, access to other contraceptives, access to testing, access to PrEP and the treatment, we make sure that they are available for the young people. This is where we can reach this. To address this issue of empowerment, the education is key. The education is key. And we have seen some programs such as Streams. We have seen the new initiative education class led by UNICEF, UNESCO, UN Women, UNAIDS, UNFPA, that we want them to keep the young people, particularly the young girls, in the schools. And we have seen some examples in the countries that when you have young people at an education system, we avoid a lot of new infections, a lot of unwanted pregnancies. And when now it comes to other key issues to work on, is to eradicate complete gender-based violence. This is very, very key. And I think, again, education, empowering the young people. Now, when we have designed those programs, the young people are key. For me, they have to be at the center. They have to be in the driving seat, designing the programs, implementing the programs like that campaign you are doing. Of course, going to evaluate very, very strategically to learn from those interventions and to evaluate those programs themselves. And I think from there, they can share different best practices with others. And finally, networking at the community level, at country level, regional level, continental, and globally, and it's what you are doing. This is where we can see the foundation, very strong foundation for NEA by 2030. Thank you very much.
So I think we might have lost Sibu. So I might just jump in. Thank you, Dr. Tharcisse, for that really succinct unpacking of the new global AIDS strategy, and really how this should galvanize further support for adolescents, young people, and key populations in their diversity, especially in the context of HIV prevention. I think that's really useful. Sibu, I see you back, so maybe you want to come back in. I was just thanking Dr. Tharcisse for his incredible intervention and reflection on the global AIDS strategy and its key focus on prevention. Sibu, can you hear us?
So I'm struggling to hear Levi. I don't know if everybody else can hear what Levi is saying. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Doc. And thank you so much again, Levi. So this particular project, really, I think it's also happening at a very good time when we have a new UNAIDS global strategy. Of course, that is one strategy where all the different countries, different programs actually buy into that particular global strategy to implement various programs and projects around in an effort to respond to HIV at different levels. So I know that in country as Zambia, we're also doing quite a lot. And we're privileged to have Dr. Connie Osborne also joining us today, who is also going to help shed more light and give us a picture in terms of what is happening at country level, both what are the current key drivers, and also she will speak to some of those key interventions that they are prioritizing, because they are the drivers, they're driving the response at the national level. And I know that this fora is very important for the young people that have been keenly following and participating in the youth prevention advocacy campaign. They want to learn more and get these facts to use also in their different efforts as they're committing to respond at individual and community level. Dr. Connie Osborne.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this initiative, the Prevention Advocacy Campaign. I am the National HIV, AIDS, STI, TB Council Director General, but we are commonly known as the just NAC, or National AIDS Council. So our role as the National AIDS Council is to coordinate and support the national multi-sectoral response towards this fight against HIV and AIDS. Zambia, as you know, it's part of the Southern African region. And you know that the Southern African region is the epicenter of the epidemic, at least in Africa. So, in fact, as a country, we are one of the hardest hit countries with HIV. I might even say that we're probably number 7 out of the 10 countries which have the highest numbers of people living with HIV. In Zambia, we have about 1.5 million people living with HIV. But we have done a lot in terms of treatment. We were actually one of the countries that was able to reach the 1990 targets from the last high-level meeting. Now we are gunning for 95 targets. So we are doing very well in terms of treatment. Now, where we are not doing well is in prevention. I think we've dropped the ball on prevention, but I don't think we're the only ones. I think globally there's quite a number of countries. Some are on standstill in terms of prevention. Others are walking. Others are running. Others have actually, I understand, maybe Lesotho or something is actually almost there. With Zambia, unfortunately, we are walking. But we think that with this renewed focus on prevention, we can do something. And so my hat's off to the youth, Sibu, to your organization, and for leading this prevention advocacy campaign. Now, in terms of, let's say, the current HIV drivers in Zambia, they are not so different from the drivers globally or in the region. It seems like limited knowledge. on HIV/AIDS. They have some knowledge, but it's not in-depth enough to change their attitudes and practice. In fact, we did a study with UNAIDS last year. We looked at our data to see we've been pouring so much money into adolescent and young people interventions, and yet in Zambia, although adolescents and young people, let's say age 15 to 24, they account for about 20-25% of the population, they are responsible for 40% of all new infections every year. And last year we had about maybe, I think last year we had 48, although the projections show that it's actually perhaps even much more than that. And if we look back, because every 5 years you have these high-level meetings where you have heads of states and governments committing themselves again to ending AIDS, as a public health threat by 2030. In 2016, we had put a target to say we must reduce the amount of new infections by 75%, taking the 2010 target, levels. So for Zambia, in 2010, we had 50,000 new infections. By end of 2020, we had maybe, the numbers may not be quite correct, but we had only reduced by, I would say, about 15%. So can you imagine, we're supposed to reduce 75% and we only reduce 15%. So we have a lot to do. So what is driving the epidemic? Like I said, it doesn't differ much from the global or regional drivers. Limited knowledge is one. Young people, I don't know, since I'm not young, but I think that young people are not scared of HIV. They're not scared of HIV because, largely because many of them have never seen anyone suffer, let alone die from HIV. And also they know that there is treatment. And in terms of they'll say, and there is PrEP, to prevent, and there is treatment, even if I get the HIV. The thing about HIV is if you get it, it means you have to take the treatment for life. And you have to make sure that you're taking it consistently. Otherwise, you will not get virally suppressed, meaning you will not get to a situation where when the doctors look under the microscope, they can't see it. It's undetectable. So they are not scared of HIV. And because they're not scared, their knowledge is not very much. Other drivers, of course, intergenerational sex, old people, young people having sex with older people, or the other way around. Sometimes it's the young people that are after the old people, I'm sure you've heard of the term blessers. They have a blesser, and then they have a boyfriend of an age mate. So intergenerational sex, which is young people going for older people and older people going for young people. So, and obviously it's transactional because they want to get something out of it. I don't know, all the goods. And sometimes it's not because it's poverty plays a role, but, even young people and adolescents who come from families which are not poor, they're still, are not scared. They don't worry about HIV. And adolescents, obviously, we know a lot of experimenting with drugs, experimenting with alcohol, experimenting with sex even, and we do know that we have key populations. Adolescents and young people are a priority population, but they're highly vulnerable to HIV. But we also have adolescents and young people who are sex workers, who are they belong to the group of men who have sex with men, or they're transgender, or they're injecting drugs. So we have to think about the young key population groups as well. And sex works also happen, even among men who have sex with men, young boys going for older men, or older men going for young boys, or just, selling sex. Peer pressure is another one. Peer pressure. I talked about multiple concurrent partners. You have a blesser, and then you have your regular boyfriend. Inadequate life skills, access. So many issues which don't differ much from the drivers at a global or regional level. Now, when it comes to interventions, in Zambia, we are lucky we have comprehensive sexuality education for schools. This is not a standalone program. It's mainstreamed in the various subjects. So it's age appropriate, it's culturally sensitive, and it's incremental in terms of the knowledge related to sexuality education. So maybe, and we usually start from grade 5, and it goes right up to secondary school, to Form 5 and Form 6. So comprehensive sexuality education is one of those programs that, as the National AIDS Council, we are really supporting. Condom programming, and then supporting provision of adolescent-friendly health services. As a country, also, we have had many campaigns that are targeting adolescents and young people. We have the Free to Shine campaign, which is being championed by the First Ladies of Africa. What it says is we want our young people to start free, meaning they shouldn't get HIV through mother-to-child transmission. And if they don't get through mother-to-child transmission, they must stay free, keep away from all these drivers. And then should they get infected, it should not progress to AIDS. So that's the start free, stay free, and AIDS free. We have another campaign, the you to you, meaning you standing for undetectable, and the other U standing for untransmissible. This is for young people, adolescents and young people who are living with HIV. And it's a way of trying to encourage them to stick to the treatment. Because when we've looked at our studies and the data, children and young people who are living with HIV, retention is very poor. And trying to get them to be virally suppressed, to have undetectable viruses in their blood is also like a challenge. So the U to You campaign says undetectable and so if you have an undetectable virus situation, it means you can't transmit. Other campaigns, of course, the Ending AIDS campaign by 2030. In Zambia, we also have the U-Report platform. I'm sure many countries have the U-Report platform. You can become a U-Reporter just by SMSing the word join. When you SMS that, it will take you to a number, 878. You call that, they ask you some questions. The target is 9 to 19 for children, and it's 20 to 24. So if you are in that age group, you can become a U-Reporter. It means you can send messages, you can ask questions, and we have people on standby to answer any question that might be related to HIV or sexual reproductive health and sexual reproductive health and rights, of course. So a lot of campaigns. What else? We also have programs like DREAMS program, which is targets adolescents and young people to empower them. It provides safe places, safe adolescent-friendly services, and they get empowered in terms of skills, how to save money and start a business. We have another program called Adaptive Leadership. This is actually just a participatory approach where we are saying that the solutions to the problems that the adolescents and young people have are in they have the solutions. So it's about empowering them to find solutions for their own problems. And us who are of a certain age, we are ready to support, because because they know from the study that we did last year, this business of using, radio, we do use radio, we use television, but the young people, they're on social media. So they know what they want. And I always say to the young people that I interact with, I always say to them, if you want to predict your future, then you have to start acting now, So what you do now is how your future is going to be. What else can I say? We have another program called Agape, which is championed by the Church's Health, Christian Health Association of Zambia. They identify vulnerable adolescents. I mean, everybody is vulnerable, but they identify these adolescents and young people and give them stipends to help them with education. They can even do village banking. They can start other small businesses. So we're doing a lot, but obviously we need to do more. If I have any message to adolescents and young people, is get involved, be proactive, join organizations like the youth platform, Sibu and them. There's so many young people organizations. Be involved, know your status. If you're positive, it's not the end of the world. So, and condoms and PrEP. Don't focus on PrEP, because PrEP only prevents HIV. It doesn't prevent STIs. It doesn't prevent condoms. So condoms, very important. PrEP, also very important. What else? Keeping to one partner. Protected sex. I can go on and on.
I know. No, thank you so much, Doc.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Doc. I'll be diving into Levi soon, but maybe just to appreciate that you've highlighted quite a number of important things there in terms of the key drivers, especially among us young people, what is affecting young people, speaking to the intergenerational sex itself as one of those key drivers. And there's some of the messages that young people have been developing. There are some messages that are speaking to that blesser. The goodies from that blesser could also transmit STIs. Okay, so young people are also aware that there's a lot that is coming from that particular key driver. The multiple concurrent sexual partnerships, I mean, that still keeps growing and it's rampant among young people. And that is also another key driver. I think I've spoken to a number of things, and also the focus in terms of what young people should be doing. The issues of young people that are not so scared of HIV anymore. And to tell you the truth, there are more young people, especially adolescent girls and young women, that are more afraid of falling pregnant than they are of HIV. The issue of treatment itself, there's so many young people that are still struggling to achieve the U=U status, the undetectable levels. Among young people, that is a struggle because access to HIV services, they still face certain barriers. And I think that is the reason why, again, we continue to speak out, and we're grateful to organizations and agencies like, for instance, the National AIDS Council, UNAIDS, for placing young people at the center within this programming framework, the programming process, the response. Young people are at the center. They have the opportunity to drive the response. What do they think works best for themselves? So I think thank you so much, Doc, for highlighting all those important components. Let me ask Levi now to probably just see what you'd like to add in terms of what you're speaking about. And I know that Levi is a young person who has a lot of exposure in terms of work and experience working and responding to HIV at regional level, working in various countries. So Levi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sibu, and once again, congratulations to yourself and folks at the ZYP for this incredible prevention campaign. I think it couldn't be more timeous, especially on the back of the recently concluded high-level meeting which Dr. Tharcisse had spoken to. And I'd really like to just echo Dr. Connie's closing sentiments there about young people getting involved and young people undertaking advocacy. And it's so great to have a stalwart in country like her who is able to make space and to bring young people in. So incredible leadership from the National AIDS Council of Zambia. Sibu, I'm going to say 5 things really briefly, and most of these things have been indicated in the recently released report which we had put out as SAT. We called the report Closing the Tap, the state of HIV prevention in Southern Africa. And first and foremost, I think we should start the conversation by saying that the single leading cause of death of African adolescents and young people remains AIDS-related mortality. And this is unacceptable. This is morally reprehensible. We don't talk about this enough. In other regions of the world, it is road traffic accidents, it's suicide, and other issues that are usually aligned to non-communicable diseases. But in Africa, it's AIDS-related. And in Africa, it's completely preventable. Yet at the same time, Dr. Connie had mentioned that, Southern Africa remains the epicenter of the AIDS pandemic. We only see Southern African member states funding around 42% on average HIV prevention programming. And that's a fact. And this has come out of data. So as young people, we really need to look quite deeply into where our member states' priorities are when we talk about HIV prevention. So those are the 2 facts. Fact number 3 is to talk about how between 2020, 2021, available resources for HIV prevention in the region have been in decline over the last 2 years. For the year 2021, we need around $1 billion for HIV prevention interventions, and this is projected to grow to $1.5 billion by 2025. The last thing I will say in terms of facts is that on average, only 10% of spending that our governments are making is being directed towards HIV prevention. Yet, again, the single leading cause of death of Africa's adolescents and young people is AIDS-related illness. So we cannot really find ourselves in this position as young people where we are not focusing on following the money and getting involved in activism and advocacy. I really like what Dr. Tharcisse had indicated in his intervention around the need for young people to participate, especially with regards to advocacy that looks at some of the structural drivers of HIV infections. And this is getting involved in advocacy around law reform and challenging the status quo that really excludes young people and keeps young people out of health facilities and keeps young people away from, making good decisions about their health, and which makes young people further vulnerable. I think it's also important to recognize what Dr. Connie had said in terms of the importance of comprehensive sexuality education for adolescents and young people, and especially for adolescents and young people who are finding themselves out of school. We know that the COVID pandemic has pushed over 240 million adolescents and young people across sub-Saharan Africa out of school, and this has made them further vulnerable towards new HIV infections. So we really have to start this conversation in the region now around how we get young people back into school, get young people back into learning, but also ensure that comprehensive sexuality education, information, and services for young people is a non-negotiable. And I think it's a really timeous time with most of the member states in East and Southern Africa convening themselves to support the updating and renewal of the ESA commitment on comprehensive sexuality education, adolescent and youth-friendly services. And I think, Sibu, as the Zambian Youth Platform, as SAT, as AFRIAN, and the whole host of youth-led and youth-serving organizations, you really do need to mobilize around the supporting of the comprehensive sexuality education agenda, as well as how CSC links young people to adolescent and youth-friendly services. Because we often know, and most of the data is telling us, that it is easier to form good health-seeking behavior in formative years than it is to change behavior when adolescents and young people are more advanced in their thinking and in their development. And comprehensive sexuality education should be a non-negotiable that us as adolescents and young people are demanding. And then lastly, I'll speak a little bit about what we really do need to see. So I would like to applaud UNAIDS for the centering of young people in their diversity and of key populations within the new global AIDS strategy. However, we need to really start seeing more investment when it comes to youth-led and youth-serving organizations in particular. I think some of the data tells us that we've seen funding and actual resources towards youth-led and youth-serving organizations working in SRHR and broader population development issues flatlined since the year 2012. So we really do need to see our partners, our developmental partners in particular, putting their money where their mouth is to avail resources for the work that young people and youth-led and youth-serving organizations are doing in communities, because it does really take resources to do a lot of work. It takes resources to mobilize and organize and to get things done. So I'll stop there, and I'd like to possibly hear some of the reflections from Dr. Connie and Dr. Tharcisse. Thanks, comrade.
Thank you so much, Levi. Very, very insightful, like always. I think I've spoken to a number of key things that we need to be doing. And of course, there are some sad statistics there of what is happening with young people, and that shouldn't be happening at the moment. I think given that we have free treatment available in most countries, if not all countries, where people are able to access this treatment, and young people shouldn't be dying
sorry, Sibu. Sorry, Sibu, I left one thing out. So I'm often asked, where's the money going to come from for HIV prevention? And if there's anything that the COVID pandemic has told us, for instance, some of the data from the IMF and the World Bank has suggested that Africa loses around 3.7% of its GDP, around $90 billion, to maladministration, to corruption, and to malfeasance. If we as young people would start to organize around challenging corrupt systems and maladministration and inefficiencies in systems, we can save money. 3.7% of the continent's GDP that could go towards funding prevention and other forms of healthcare is being lost just because we're letting corruption and things happen. So one place to start would be to get more involved, as Dr. Connie said, to really get active and to invest your time, effort, and energy in activism and advocacy.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you so much, Levi, once again, for that insightful piece. And getting involved is definitely at the center, even at the center of this project itself. And young people need to get involved. We need to get more and more young people getting involved in the HIV response at national level. Wherever you are, you can definitely be able to do something. HIV cannot be stopped by National AIDS Council alone, but individuals, not even by UNAIDS alone, but individuals need to do something at their own level. As an individual, you can do something to either prevent the infection moving forward, you can stop it there. So for those that are joining us, whether you're joining us on Facebook, on Twitter, or YouTube, welcome. Greetings, of course, from the Zambian Youth Platform, the largest youth network in Zambia. We are glad and very excited to be implementing this wonderful project. This wonderful project being supported by UNAIDS, and of course with technical support from a number of our other usual all-weather partners in the country. Dr. Tharcisse?
Yes, I think building on what we have discussed now, this 2021 has been a wonderful year despite the COVID challenge. We have this now 2021 political declaration, which sets very clear target by 2025. We have the new AIDS global strategy. I indicated the key priorities. The question, the way forward, how to domesticate now those strategies, those political declarations at country level, because the global strategy was developed by in a participative manner. Zambia participated, the political declaration was endorsed by Zambia government. Now, let us domesticate it. One is important to disseminate that strategy so that we understand what we have to do as implementers. For the young people, what I can suggest is to use this campaign also, as you are doing, to make sure that those targets are understood and also are owned by the communities. Those targets are owned by the young people. I would suggest that in coming weeks, under the leadership of NAC, we can start now setting the target by 2025 for Zambia, particularly on prevention when we are lagging behind. And I think the Zambia Youth Platform should be at center when we're discussing other things. And I think better we do it very quickly and we understand what we have to do, and we start really to have those targets, not only at national level, but also at sub-national level, province level, at district level, so that we know where we can go by 2025. We identify, because we're talking about inequalities. Even when you look at in a country, the provinces are not at the same level. The districts are not at the same level. So it is important that we look at those areas we are lagging behind, and also geographically where we should focus in coming. The lack of funding, and I think you are right, we have really to change the things how we do to make sure that efficiency is key. Efficiency has to be key because we have competitive priorities. We have now COVID, and I saw in the chart that someone was putting an idea that let us use our community to make sure that HIV prevention and also treatment are delivered at the community level. And I think we have learned a lot from HIV during this COVID pandemic. We have seen how the communities, and I salute the young people who have been able to support the young people to continue to have access to treatment and also to HIV prevention services. So let us give the space to the communities, the space to the young people to drive those change. And I think we will make it if really we put our effort together and we give those priorities to the young people, to the communities, so that they can drive the HIV response. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tharcisse, again. I think that issue of setting targets for prevention, I mean, we're definitely lagging behind. I've seen some of those pictures where they're showing Zambia is actually walking towards, I mean, in terms of efforts for prevention, other countries are running, other countries are jogging, but we're still walking. I think we need to do better. We definitely need to be able to set those targets. And I mean, one thing I love is that Dr. Connie Osborne, I know, is very passionate about prevention. She speaks about prevention most of the time. I think that is another voice that adds to this conversation every single time. I know you're a very passionate man as well around HIV prevention and ensuring that we are able to close the tap. So, and I'm sure you can do great going forward, but placing the people that are majorly affected is also key. The young people themselves, one thing that has been very obvious also during this campaign, during our conversation with the young people, is that the adolescent girls and young women, for instance, are at the center of HIV transmission, because they are able to entertain both their age group, boys younger than them, men much older than them, so they can transmit it any direction from there. So if young adolescent girls and young women are fully empowered, they're able to protect themselves, whether it's those that are living with HIV that are able to achieve the U equals U status, meaning they're not able to transmit to any other person, or those that are HIV negative and working towards maintaining their negative status. I think that is very important. We can definitely be able to achieve that. And one thing just we need to mention quickly is that identifying some of the key gaps in as far as HIV is concerned, we have actually been able to try out a few interventions using this particular project, where we are, for instance, this week, we are in Kitwe again. We'll be implementing some men's weekend clinics because we know men are lagging behind in as far as accessing services is concerned. So specifically a clinic for men. Tomorrow, we have some facility that will be providing also a weekend clinic for key population. There's a weekend clinic for persons with disabilities, as well as other weekend clinics that will integrate young people in their diversity. So it's really trying to reach out to these young people, interface meetings where young people are interfacing with service providers, really addressing the barriers and negotiating on how they can best respond to removing those, ensuring that those barriers are removed and young people are able to enjoy access to those services that are provided by their government free of charge. So all that is actually going on. We'll be sharing quite a lot in terms of what we are learning, and we'll be communicating further with, of course, National AIDS Council, UNAIDS, SAT, who are also our other partners, to see how can we also be able to ensure that we are responsive to those issues that young people are bringing out that have been confirmed as major barriers in as far as access to services is concerned. So we are very excited and looking forward to seeing where we go from this particular project. What else can we be able to do together in moving forward, of course. So Dr. Connie, there's a quick question. I think this question the person has sent you a question a number of times because they really want a response. The income generating activities that you mentioned. So the question is, are these available countrywide? A quick response from you. I know we're out of time. Yes.
No, unfortunately not. Programs like Dreams, they provide that, and Agape, but unfortunately they're not in all the districts. What we are pushing for as National AIDS Council is to scale up these programs so that they're not just in specific districts. Unfortunately not, but we'll get them. But just to add to the conversation, I want the young people, the ones that are listening and all that, to be the change that they want to see. They must get involved. They are at the center of the response. Every infection which we do not prevent means one more person who needs treatment for life. And that takes a lot of resources. So I think that's my message.
Thank you so much, Dr. Osborne. So I think as we wind up now, I will just ask Levi for final remarks just before we wind up. I know that we have really overrun our show, and we're of course looking forward to some more shows to come. Levi, just a closing remarks, please. Your final remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Sibu. Once again, I think everything's been said by Dr. Connie and Dr. Tharcisse. I think just the most important thing for me is, again, advocacy, and getting more young people in and getting more young people involved, and then freeing up resources for youth-led, youth-serving and organizations as a non-negotiable. And then lastly, this opportunity with the ESA commitment coming up for renewal and the role of young people in really setting their own agenda and demanding accountability, but also defining what a future looks like in terms of HIV prevention and in terms of better SRHR outcomes for adolescents and young people across the African continent. Get involved, get engaged, talk to ZYP, talk to SAT, talk to UNAIDS, and let's get all hands on deck. This is our future at stake. Thank you, Sibu.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I think we've lost Sibu, but thank you so much to you once again, Dr. Tharcisse, and thank you, Dr. Connie, for your respective work at UNAIDS and at the National AIDS Council of Zambia. I'd like to thank our tech platform for really facilitating this and for the support that they provide to ZYP. And I think we can close off the session, and you will find more details for the next live session on the ZYP social media platforms. And thank you for getting engaged, and have a great weekend and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.